Hi guys, Vinny here and welcome to the workshop. Today I'm going to talk about road pedals. So most of us, when we think about road pedals, we immediately think of Shimano. The SPD SL model is very popular, and due to its robustness, simplicity, etc., it's a good choice for general riding. This is the True Ace model, my best-selling pedal here in the shop, but it's not what I use myself. If you follow me for a long time, then you know a little bit about that, and today I'm going to elaborate more with respect to the questions that I got lately. So apart from this solution, there are also the look, blade and different variation of the keels. These are also quite popular, and the advantage here is so the high-end models are a bit lighter than these, and they're a bit more aerodynamic because of the blade design. You don't have this gap, hole, etc. Downside is stack height is higher and they're not so durable, not nearly as durable, would I say. And the same goes for the cleats, not just the pedals and the bearings themselves. However, what I use are Speedplay pedals, namely these are the Speedplay arrows that I use most often. And there are some myths concerning these pedals and some misconceptions. But the first thing I want to explain is why do I still keep using them. Mind you, I have changed and went through a huge amount of bikes and parts and wheels and equipment in the last couple of years, but not pedals. No, ever since I got on them in late 2016, I would say, I have never went back to anything else except for the occasional Favero Asioma for testing, for power meter comparison testing. These are not available as power meter versions, so that's why. Other than that, for high performance applications, for racing, aerodynamics, etc., when those things matter, you want a set of these. Now, one of the reasons I like them, apart from the performance aspect, is the simplicity. And this might sound counterintuitive for most of you, because, well, a look pedal or cleat looks something like this, and Shimano being very similar. These are just pieces of plastic that are attached to your shoe with 3 bolts, and that's pretty much it. The problem with this one-piece design is that you have to control all aspects of the fit at once, and that's a bit problematic because you just put it on the shoe and it just wiggles around. You have no real points of reference of where it should be pointing or how the float is going to look like. So it's not so easy, and unless you have a professional fitting jig, you will find it very hard to adjust two of your shoes so they fit like they should. And if you take these up to another shoe or a new shoe or some completely different shoe, if you want to replicate that, you're going to have a hard time. So enter the Speedplay cleat, which looks much more complicated. Certainly it does use many more parts, at least on a standard 3-bolt shoe. That's definitely the case. We'll get back to that later. So here you have the bottom platform, that is black plastic part here that goes on the shoe with the same 3 bolts as a look cleat. Oops, that fell. Anyway, this platform is what the cleat itself is fitted to. Again, in case you have regular shoes. Now, what's the important thing about this? The platform itself only slides forward and aft. so you have that aspect of the feet separated. Then the cleat itself on the platform slides only right to left, so you have that aspect well dialed and easy to replicate as well. And then finally, the tilt is adjusted by these little side bolts, which enable to rotate the shoe relative to the pedal and also adjust the amount of float, so how much it rotates. I have mine locked out because that's what I prefer, and also you can change the amount of float infinitely within the same cleat, so you don't need different cleats for a different float. So for me, this is the advantage that I'm looking for and I'm really appreciating in the Speedplay pedals. Also partly because, well, I have shoes for training, I have shoes for hot weather, I have specific shoes for time trialing, aero shoes, so I want these all to fit the same, and they're essentially the same model of shoe, and with the same cleat, with this system, I can have that spot on without resorting to some jigs or some weird stuff. So yeah, makes my life easier. Then for the performance aspects, depending on the configuration, Speedplay pedals can be lighter. The pedals themselves are certainly lighter because they don't have any clipping mechanism on them. It's all in the cleat. That makes the cleat heavier. That's why I said it depends. They can be lighter, they don't have to be. For me, that's not really the point. The point is more clearance when cornering. So with these you can also have a very low Q factor, and the pedal itself is very unobtrusive. So that's great. I've never clipped a pedal with these. I have the Shimano's and I almost crashed at a high speed, so I know what I'm talking about. So I prefer that aspect, and of course, yeah, it's not so hard to imagine. If you take this system, with its smooth surface, it's a lot more aerodynamic, and even more so if you have specially modified shoes with lower stack. Going back to stack, the stack height of Look pedals, for example, is I think more than 15 millimeters, if I'm correct. Certainly with these it looks like it's a lot. With these it's 8, so that's basically half, and you can reduce as a result your saddle height by the same amount and your front end stack by the same amount, which means your overall position is lower despite having the same fit parameters, so you're more aerodynamic again. So these are the performance aspects. Now people say, and I've heard many of the same reviews and ideas, that this is all well and good, but these pedals require a huge amount of maintenance and they don't last very long, and things like this. So this is what I really want to clear up in this video, to show you my own experiences and what does it look like. First thing, durability of the pedals themselves. Now I've intentionally picked this pair, because these are my oldest and most used pedals. As I said, I had these since, I would say, November 2016, and between now and then I think I've ridden, well, it has to be over 60,000 kilometers split between the 3 pairs of my Speedplay pedals, but these would take the grunt of that, so I think that's at least 40. So 40,000 kilometers in all conditions on these pedals. What has worn out? Nothing. Nothing is worn out. Nothing is loose. Nothing is unfunctional. They're just perfectly fine. I normally see the same amount of durability with Shimano pedals, and I have achieved that with these, with no extreme maintenance, no extreme attention to them whatsoever. So yeah, if anyone tells you these don't last very long, it's a myth, or they have done something horribly wrong when it comes to maintaining them. So the first thing Speedplay tells you to do is to lubricate the cleats regularly with anything but oil. Essentially that's what they're saying. Well, the thing is, I've tried many PTFE based lubricants, dry lubricants, things like that, wax even. None of them work. You get creaking and you get bad noises and the cleat remains dry. What works for me, and it's basically from the early days, I spray some thin oil-based lube like WD-40, something similar, on there, and I wipe the excess off. Certainly it's not the cleanest solution, it looks something like this. So there is a bit of a dirt attraction, but the cleats remain silent, they don't wear out, and yeah, they work. Also you get easy entry and exit, so in my experience this is what works, despite what Speedplay are telling you. So with these, the cleats last incredibly long. Now the other thing that people complain about with these is the price of the cleats themselves. And yeah, if you take that, it's around, well, I would 5 to 6 times more expensive than these plastic little shits, but they last 10 times as much. Realistically speaking, if I think back how many cleats I've worn out over this period, I think it's two pairs of cleats that really wore out. The rest are still and it's on these shoes that I only use for training. The rest are all the original ones. So in 4 years to wear out 2 pairs of cleats, I think that's not so bad at all. And even those cleats weren't really unusable. It's just the fact that if the C-spring wears out quite a lot, you lose that security of engagement. But if you're not racing, it doesn't really matter, because you will never do full-on sprints where you could unclip accidentally. Otherwise, with a fresh set, it just can't happen. This is also why I always keep fresh cleats on my shoes that I intend to use for racing and town running. For training, it doesn't really matter. Another thing about the cleats, since they've introduced the walkable version, the walkable / aero version, this really is the only cleat that you can walk in with relative comfort, because it has a nice grippy rubber surface here that you can change separately, although it basically never wears out. I've never changed this one. This is still the first one that I ever started using. The rest I just kept as spares in case, but I never needed them. And it's also because of the shape. You know, it has this really flat shape, so you can walk on it with relative stability instead of just, you know, balancing on these little prongs. So that's a nice feature. Of course, you have to keep in mind that you can't step in mud, because it won't clear. It has nowhere to go unless you have the pave versions, which I'm going to talk about in a separate video. I think this is getting quite long already. So yeah, that's one thing. And then what people also complain about, apart from these other issues that I mentioned and can be very easily solved, is the wear in terms of the rocking motion on the pedal. Now this happens when your base adapter plate wears out, because the contact surface here is metal, it's stainless steel, and it wears holes and indentations in the adapter plate. So if you have those as spare, I think they were possible to buy. you don't actually need to change the whole cleat, just that one. And there's a solution for that as well. Now, coming from Watchshop, they started producing these stainless steel plates that go between the very thin stainless steel plate, goes between the adapter and the cleat. So it's basically steel against steel, and then it wears very, very slowly. So I'm going to try that out next, along with their very cool low stack adapters, which I've already shown you before. Although these require a hard, non-reversible modification to the shoe, as I've done here, for a very sleek profile. Yeah, so these are all problems that have their solutions, or at least I'm aware of them. Another thing that can happen, and it has happened to me, is that the bolts get cooked and, well, corroded in the sole itself. They become hard to remove, especially because they use Phillips head screws, which is not ideal in my book. So apart from removing them regularly, of course, nobody does that. What you can do, and what I'm experimenting with, is titanium bolts that don't corrode. So I have them over here, and also underneath. And these work really well so far, and also have Allen bolts, so it's easier to torque them, easier to install and remove them. So that's another thing. And now let's talk about one elephant in the room here with Speedplay pedals, and that's availability. Now, if you watch the news around cycling, you probably know by now that Speedplay as a company have been bought by Wahoo, the trainer company. And since I'm a Wahoo dealer, I have also access now directly to Speedplay, which is good, but they didn't really go in the direction that I think it's, well, not a very positive one. So for first, they eradicated most of the lineup. So gone are the scissors, gone are the nanograms, well, basically all models except the ones I'm going to show you. They also eradicated all spare parts, so all you can buy now is the cleats themselves, and that's about it. And they eradicated the spindle length options also. What you can currently get, and what we stock as well, as I said, the Volkable Aero cleats. Then there are the chromoly zeros, which is the cheapest, heaviest option. Volkable cleats included, and the double-sided option, chromoly axle. So this is one thing you can get. Then you have the stainless option, slightly lighter and better looking. And you have the Aero version, again with the stainless spindle, looking like this. This is a fresh pair. Again, same cleats all around. And there's also one more model that we don't stock because it doesn't really make sense for the clientele that we have. It's the ultralight action. This is essentially a zero with very low release tension. Not ideal for racing, as you would imagine. As I said, the spindle length options are no longer available. It's just the 53, the standard one, throughout the range. What I have are the older models which are available still with the titanium axles. all of my pedals are of this sort, and that's because I wanted the lower Q factor that automatically comes with these. So that's a 3mm shorter axle for getting as narrow as possible. For me that works fine. So yeah, these are the options that I have, and I'm going to explore some more, in the sense that, yeah, I've already shown you my titanium cleat bolts and the watch shop adapters. These I'm going to use up for the exhaust shoes. And there are also a couple of companies that offer titanium bow ties. This is the clip-in section to make them even lighter. And they also offer spindles in various lengths, even more than Speedplay originally had. So I'm going to explore those options as well, just to get a real overview or all the options that are available right now, so we can offer them here in the shop. Yeah, so that's all. Going back to the bow tie made from titanium, this is also an area where you can see the slightest amount of wear in the pedal. I don't think that will be able to pick that up in the camera. And also one thing here, where there's a slight wear on the spindle from being in contact with the cleat. Now this is usually happening when you ride them with worn out cleats. It's not ideal because it can cause friction, wear of course, and loss of power. So what I've also tried on these ones, and it works pretty well, is I just took the Dremel and I dremeled out a bit of section from here, so this valley is deeper, and that solves the issue. Okay, so I think that's all for now. Definitely all you need to know about Speedplay pedals and why it would be advantageous to use them. If you want to know more about other equipment that I use myself and work on for customers, then don't forget to tune into the channel later on and keep the notifications on. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.